Welcome to Hudson RPO's podcast on racial equality and diversity. Hear from Hudson RPO leaders as they encourage organizations to just start on their D&I journey.
Hello and welcome back to Just Start. A very special episode of Just Start, I should add. So, in our last session, we had a larger group. I think we mentioned that part of our intention in moving forward is to broaden the number of voices that we bring to this conversation. But today, we wanted to actually go back to the core group and acknowledge a really important voice in this conversation, which is that of Mark Rogers. Who is moving on to bigger and brighter things. So this is, I'm devastated to say, his final podcast with the group, at least in this capacity. We're going to try to compel him to come back in a different capacity. So given that, and given that we're approaching, not quite at 10 episodes in, we thought it might make sense for us to take a step back and just reflect on this journey of starting this podcast. And starting this dialogue together, and what that is, what we take from that, and what that has meant for each of us. So, Casey, I'm gonna start with you and just ask, particularly given, as I think we talked about early on in the series, you were initially not quite sure that yours was the voice for this podcast, and I think we all certainly disagreed, and I'm very glad we did, because it's been an important voice in this podcast. So from when you were questioning whether this is the right venue for you to now, where you're an old pro at this, what does that journey look like for you?
Yeah, it's so funny, because I was just going to start that exact way. And when I was asked to participate, I questioned, first of all, even participating in a podcast. Video is not really something I love to record myself or anything like that. And then just, did I have any value to add? And really, I've been thinking a lot about this over the last week as we come to, as you said, our almost 10th podcast. And I've gained so much, and I look back and I think, what if I had said no? What if I, hadn't participated? Look at everything I would have missed out on. I really feel like not only have we been able to give to our viewers, a lot of this information, but I've really gained a lot of knowledge and expertise from all of you. And just with real life stories and information, it sticks with you. It's not like when you do a training on DEI and you're getting all this information, and it doesn't stick as much as hearing from people who have gone through certain things or experienced certain things or improved certain things and taken action, and how those personal stories have really allowed me to offer so much more to my teams, my clients, and everyone, actually. I mean, we're even having diversity conversations in my household because of this podcast. So it's been a real win for me, and Mark has been really critical to that. And Mark, I just want to thank you for sharing everything that you have, and really pushing me to be a better leader by thinking about things differently and taking action differently.
Thank you.
So I want to say thank you to that. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to hand it off to Gary.
All right. Well, first things first, we've done, I think we just discussed this, our 9th podcast, and I still haven't learned that the cord on my, it goes on actually this side, so it's not coming across my body. So I still have a lot to learn, obviously, but I echo what Casey said in terms of the experience. It's been great, because listen, the things that we've been telling you are things that we're going through too as well. So people share their experiences. The feedback that we've been getting from the podcast have been truly motivating, to be honest with you. It's been great, and it's really good hearing different perspectives, and not just perspectives of folks that are the victim of some of these things, but the folks that are innocent standbyers or standbys, or what's the word I'm looking for? This is going to go on blooper reel. Bystanders.
There you go.
So going on blooper reel. But innocent bystanders and people who may have done things that they didn't realize they were doing, right? In terms of that, and then other individuals that may not be so innocent, right? But in any event, the feedback has been great. To your point, it's better than statistics. It's really, that experience. And I shared something earlier in the podcast, and it was really great that Mark experienced the same thing. It's great for us to kind of banter off of each other. Mark has been great, a great addition, but truly I consider him a friend. I think it's just really good to have him a part of this. But it was great to hear that other people were experiencing maybe some of the same things that you've been experiencing for so long. Mark, you and I share quite a bit, not only just that incident, but some other similar experiences, on our careers, right? So, but anyway, I'm gonna miss you. I appreciate, obviously the experience, and hopefully it continues. As Jeremiah said, hopefully you can come back to the podcast in a different type of capacity, but
Yes,
still
totally.
add to it, right? Yeah. So yeah, exactly. That's a great idea. But yeah, so those are the things that I think that I took away from what we've done thus far.
Yeah.
So, Mark, what is it? What has this experience been for you? I'm not going to say meant, but how would you describe this experience? What is the impact, if any, that it's had for you? And what are you taking away from this little group that we've assembled here?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, you said moving on to bigger and brighter things. There's nothing bigger and brighter than all of you. So, and I mean that. Moving on to something
stop.
different.
I'm blushing. I'm blushing.
See, it's hard not to like the guy, right?
Yeah, I know.
Right?
So, when we started this, I mean, it certainly has evolved, and I think we came into this and we weren't really sure what to expect. And I can't remember. So, are we counting the 2 episodes that we jettisoned in the episode total? So technically, if we're not counting those, then we're up to 11 or 12. But
double digits.
I think we weren't really sure what to expect and the direction that this was going to go. The idea was for us to have this be an opportunity for us to bring viewers along in our journey, and it kind of has evolved into a little bit more. This has meant a great deal for me in a lot of different ways, but I think the coolest thing that I would say about this experience is that it really kind of typifies what you hope, or what organizations should hope to get out of their DEI strategies. First of all, we may all agree on a lot of things, but we're all very different, and come from different walks of life and have different perspectives and different views, which has made this dialogue even more interesting. But what's been even more interesting is what would have been great is if we could have had behind the scenes cameras for everything in this whole experience. Because when I think about how we operated as a leadership team, and there's for the viewers, there's a broader group of leaders that are part of our team. But when I think about how the 4 of us operated together before this, we were close, we were engaged. But this experience, sharing our thoughts, sharing our experiences, doing it in this way, has really changed the way we operate as a leadership team. And we talked about some of the silos that over the years have existed, and have really been broken down and continue to really be broken down, as we get deeper into our efforts in terms of DEI. And so we are the case study for the business, value and the proposition for investing in DEI. Talk about a boon for the productivity and engagement just of the 4 of us, and how we relate and engage one another in our daily work. Which I think has really benefited from the conversations that we have here. So for me, that's been the coolest thing, and that's been the greatest impact. I think we've all been on the side of contributing to DEI strategy and implementing initiatives and so forth, but it's more, it hasn't felt as authentic and in tune from an experiential standpoint. And so to me, this has just further solidified that if you really invest as an employer, as a leader, as a team member in DEI, you embrace it, you engage, you control this, and how effective your initiatives can be here, as long as you're open and candid and transparent with one another. And I think we have really benefited as a team. So I'm excited to see what happens, right? And so and then I'll get off my my soapbox, but the path forward I think here is what everyone needs to be thinking about. If you're viewing and have viewed the last few episodes, we've talked about just getting started, and we've done that. But now, we really need to be thinking about pivoting to action. and outcomes, right? It's not just about activity, a flurry of activity. If you're not really experiencing outcomes and results, then, what are you doing? And so I'm really looking forward to, seeing and hearing in future episodes how, that comes to fruition with the work that we're doing as an organization. And that's what our viewers should be thinking about. You got started, now move on. Now, focus on driving impact and results, because that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks, Mark, for bringing it back to that, the initial intent behind the podcast, because I want to spend a little bit of time there. So again, to your point, we called it Just Start because we wanted to sort of, for companies that hadn't really given much time or space to diversity, equity, and inclusion, just wanted to give them basically a model to follow of how you get started on that journey, give some guidance, some tips and tricks, so to speak. But I think honestly, what we modeled was the dialogue. So independent of anything that we might have recommended, talked about, dismissed, in the course of our podcast series, what we really have been modeling for companies is an authentic dialogue where people feel like they can bring their perspective into the conversation. And, from my standpoint, to translate that into action, we're in such a better place to be able to do that, because we're not just sort of seeing what the trend is in the DEI space. What are the best practices? What are other companies doing? Let's trial that. We really started with, where are we? Where are we collectively, the four of us, and where are we as an organization?
Mm-hmm.
What is, and then we need to know that in order to know where we go from there. So that is the next step. But honestly, this conversation that the four of us have been having, and it's a conversation that is beyond the four of us within our company, because other people view this, right? Like, I think it is so essential to be able to have that authentic dialogue, that authentic space of communication, in order to be able to say we're doing something from a place of authenticity and not because it's the trend that's on the street.
Right.
That's my soapbox moment.
It's so interesting because I think about, like, as you two were talking, I'm thinking, oh my God, we're like our own little mini ERG. Like, I almost think that's one of the benefits to ERGs. I mean, there are some, positives and negatives to ERGs, but it's almost a benefit to ERGs. And I feel like we're almost our own little ERG, which is a, safe place to talk about those types of things and share stories and for those ERG employee resource groups. But yeah, just as you were talking, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we created an ERG. It's just the Just Start one.
Yeah. We had, Casey and I had a good chat yesterday with a just forming ERG and kind of helping them get started with their planning and how they establish pillars and their focus. And there were a lot of really, good exchanges there. I think that the point for me was, and what I like about how, this series came about was, we all felt, passionate about the topic, and we wanted to, just start. But I think what I would say for people who, have a passion in this space, certainly leaders who have the ability to influence, is that you have the power to influence and you have the power to create that space, whatever that is, whether it's through, employee resource groups, creating programs. You have the power to create the space for this to happen. And one thing that I think is sometimes is a little frustrating is that there's often this feeling or this sentiment of powerlessness. And, we've heard executives say, well, they're, in terms of specifically for African-American talent, well, there's not necessarily this pool. Well, that's not true. You create the space for it to, exist, assuming that it doesn't already exist in your company. So, yeah, I really, on so many levels, I think this experience has just drove home, what employers should be doing, what they should be thinking. But above all, now that you've just started, there's really, we're beyond what do we do here? What do? You create the space if it doesn't exist.
And this is one of those things where, like taxes, it impacts everyone. So this is a subject that there's no one, I think anyone, whether you've seen the podcast or not, that this doesn't have an indirect or direct relevance or impact to your organization, your culture, whatever it is, your environment. So it's that type of topic. It's so funny because the Just Start is it's certainly apropos, and certainly for me, one of the examples I gave was how I accepted some things for so long because of what you mentioned, Mark. Maybe a feeling of powerlessness. Maybe it was me being a little bit embarrassed. Maybe it was me avoiding conflict, whatever it was.
Yeah.
It certainly happened, and it happened for a long amount of time, for several years, if not decades. So, this is happening across the board. So I love the fact that we're involved with this. We know people that it's impacted. We have been in that situation where we have not started. So for you to have the opportunity to start with us is I think it's extremely it's a great opportunity. Just really, really love the fact that we're engaged in this and we're fully engaged. And the cool thing is, it's one of those things that once you start, it's kind of like a snowball running downhill, right? It's like you can't stop,
Yeah.
and it's great. And hopefully that's, making the same impact, to folks that are listening in the podcast.
Yeah, and speaking of snowballs, and I know in a future episode you'll want to talk about retention and what are you doing to retain diverse talent and the impact that leaving diverse talent leaving the organization has. But hopefully this is an opportunity, right? We started this, and this hopefully will create. I know we've got guests who have appeared on the episodes, and there are a lot of people who are passionate about this topic. So hopefully, talking about creating space, my departure will create space for someone to step in and learn and contribute, to the dialogue here. But I do look forward to seeing how you all progress the topic here. Going forward, this work is infinite. The conversation, even if we ever get to a point where we feel satisfied with representation and equity and what that looks like in corporate America, this is a conversation that will likely and should never end as long as people are different and coming from different walks of life. So I really do look forward to seeing the future of this podcast and what Hudson does with the overall D&I strategy. But I'm proud of the work that we all have done together. So I want to thank you all for your engagement and for the fun. It's been a great deal of fun. So I look forward to seeing the blooper reel when that's put together. And it's just been a great deal of fun. And that's the way it should be.
Well, I think on behalf of all of us, Mark, I can't thank you enough for bringing your voice with its power and clarity to this conversation. It's meant a lot to me personally, and I know that it has a real impact in terms of the space that you are leaving. But that space absolutely is imprinted with your mark, no pun intended. So thank you for your
Nicely done, Jeremiah. Nicely done.
Nailed it.
Pun intended.
Well, thank you, Mark. It feels weird to be doing our final sign off with this group of four, but I'm so grateful for this experience. I'm so grateful to you, and I'm so thankful that you are absolutely coming back to this podcast in a different form in the future.
Absolutely.
So, as always, and for the last time, Gary Jones, Mark Rogers, Casey Butler, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Good luck, Mark.
Thanks, guys.
To speak with any of today's participants about your Just Start journey, email juststart@hudsonrpo.com. All right, we ready?
Yeah.
Do we need to count? Let's count off just in case.
Okay.
1,
2,
3,
4.
Great.
excellent.
Everybody ready?
Yeah.
New York.
Take
Don't
a
move
sip
in your
of water
chair.
if you need it.
For others in the organization or your
Great,
team.
Gary. That's where we're going to start.
Yeah.
I'll give myself to answer that question. All right.
Like, oh, we love people with a degree from this organization, or we love people who have.
Hey.
You guys mind if I
Buddy?
take my place on the podcast?
I feel like he's got a far more interesting perspective than we do.
Yeah, absolutely. He will, for sure.
I wondered if that's.
Well, look,
Man, Casey, you were on fire.
Yeah,
Man.
it's like, pow, 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 pow.
You were
My
like,
energy's
man,
from
you were-
this morning. I didn't get enough sleep last night. I don't drink
Fire,
coffee, so I can't blame it on coffee.
man. Yeah.
Did you guys hear my dog? Did you hear crunching in the background?
no.
No.
Good. I feel bad now. I threw my pen at him. He was as soon as we started recording, he's like crunch, 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 eating his food. Now he's looking at me like, how dare you? Get you, get it?
At this point.
I don't know whether you want to say that it was 23 years ago, but like it hasn't solved the problem in 23 years.
Didn't have to do the math.
But
I'm gonna go drop him up there. 1 second.
All right.
All
Go. His laughter is the greatest thing ever. Oh my god.
probably shouldn't have scratched my head there at the end. But
I think we got that.
So that was the one story I was thinking about. I can see Paddington Bear in the background when Carrie moved on the screen.
But isn't that weird that that's like, wow, when it's basically like, fire the problematic people. Like that should be table stakes, right?
And then
We've learned from our mistakes.
Okay.
we've done that. Yeah, it was
so I'll
hopeful
stop
that we
recording.
decided to toss that episode anyway, but yeah.
Yes.
Right? So you like, you've gone through unconscious bias training. Now you're no longer a biased human.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're cured.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
That was it. I just made a joke.
Okay.
Clearly not that funny.
You're cured.
Sorry, I totally missed it.
He said you're cured.
And then I did the lay your hands on,
Yeah.
you know.
All right, that was a good one.
Yeah, great one.
Chris, are we good? Did it record?
No. You guys got to record it again. Yeah.
That's all right.
We didn't get a chance to throw your husband under the bus.
No, you didn't get to-
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Catch up on those
Thanks.
other podcasts, folks.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. All right.
Like and
Cheers, guys.
share.
See you guys.
Bye.
See ya.